Everyone, this is the Whitman Finance Committee meeting. Today is Monday, March 22nd. It's 7 o'clock. We're broadcasting on the Zoom platform, thanks to Whitman Hanson Community Access. And we have a draft agenda that was emailed in advance of the meeting. I'll just bring your attention to some of the highlights. The minutes that we have outstanding are from March 1st, March 8th, and March 15th. We do have two of those that were emailed and then forwarded to the committee this afternoon. So the reserve fund stands at $37,321.20. The public forum, as you are well aware, is temporarily suspended due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the limitations. If someone from the public wishes to make some comments to the Finance Committee, I invite you to send an email to randerson@whitman/ma.gov. So under new business, we have budget, and we also have Article 2, Department Review. Under old business, we have subcommittee reports, and we also have the Whitman Hanson Regional School District items that are on our standing agenda. Also the annual town meeting and the special town meeting warrants, and the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen agenda. Other business, we'll hear from our town administrator. Welcome, Lincoln. And communications, we do have one communication from the Whitman Hanson Regional School District. And then at the bottom of the agenda, there are the upcoming meetings. There is one typographical error in there. If you want to make a note that one of the meetings in April is listed as a Tuesday. It's actually Monday, the 19th is our meeting instead of Monday, the 20th, or Tuesday, the 20th, as it's listed here. So with that, we can move right into our agenda. If the board so chooses, we can review the meeting minutes. Did anybody not have an opportunity to review them or would like more time? Kathleen?
Yeah, I'd like to
Rosemary?
table them.
Okay. We will table the meeting minutes to our next meeting. Just be aware we now have 3 outstanding meeting minutes. We don't want to table them too long. So then we'll move into the budget discussion. So where we left off last week was, and welcome Ken as well, we had a discussion on the lines within Article 2 that are under the purview of the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator, and they were reviewed and questions were asked by the committee. So I understand the committee's then next plan for our scheduled review here is to look at other departments and give your thoughts to Lincoln as he prepares a balanced budget for the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. So I don't know if we want to put a copy of Article 2 up on the screen. Would that be a good idea? Okay, I see some head shaking, yes. Ken, do you have the ability to share your Article 2, or Lincoln or John?
I do not. I'm on my phone. I'm not on a computer,
All right.
unfortunately.
John, do you have it handy? I can, I'm sorry, I had to get a different setup here so I can.
I've made so many
Yeah.
notes and comments and,
Sure.
you know, made different calculations that it's just not, I'm sorry, I'm just not ready to share this at this time.
No,
All right, does anybody else have the ability to share their screen and have an Article 2, the one we've been working with? I believe it is dated, the working copy 2/3/21.
No, 2/9.
2/9/21. I think any copy of Article 2 would, well, within the last month would be adequate for this exercise anyways, I would think. So, Lincoln, is that something you can
yeah, just
find?
give me a moment, please.
All right, well, we're waiting for that. When I skip ahead to the communications, I'll read the communication that the Finance Committee received as a copy from the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District. It's addressed to the Town Administrator, Mr. Lincoln Heineman. Dear Mr. Heineman, this letter serves as notification that on March 17th, 2021, the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District School Committee voted by a 2/3 majority to adopt the fiscal year 2022 proposed budget. In accordance with the PK-12 Whitman-Hanson Regional School District's Regional Agreement, Section 4E2 and Mass General Laws, Chapter 71, Section 16B at $57,572,579.40. The total operating assessment of $29,526,021.94 to be shared by the towns in accordance with the regional agreement to the town of Whitman is $16,575,019.22. And to the town of Hanson is $12,951,002.72. So should you have any questions, please contact Jeff Samanak, Superintendent of Schools. And if I can help in any way, please don't hesitate to call me. And it's signed David Leary, the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District Treasurer. So that is the communication that we received. So again, the delay in working forward with Article 2 was related to the fact that we didn't have these numbers, which is the committee prepared to plug in those numbers in the respective columns within Article 2? Discussion. Not looking for a formal vote. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Well, the first point I'd like to make, and I sat in on those meetings, the school committee meetings, is that because the statutory method was fully implemented this year, Whitman has saved $1.3 million compared to the days when it was calculated without respect to the statutory method, using the per pupil method. So I think we owe a debt of gratitude to Don Byers for having the fortitude to push the statutory method last year. Over the course of 2 years, it saved us over $2 million in terms of our assessments. That's a huge change to the town of Whitman. We'd be in even worse trouble than we already are if we weren't using the statutory method.
Point,
I want to make a
Kathleen.
note. I want to make a quick note. Because statutory method is an aggregate wealth model, the actual impact is the same to both towns financially per person. So the wealthier person could afford more, the wealthier town should be able to afford more. So that 1.3 shouldn't be a burden to where it belongs, essentially. It was a burden more to our community because our wealth index is lower. So it's the money is being charged to the people it's supposed to be charged to, essentially. And I again want to echo my thanks to Ms. Byers.
Okay, thank you, Rosemary. All right, do we want to move? Go ahead, Dave.
In past meeting, in regards to this subject, in past meetings, a finance committee member had entered into the record a document as it being factual. We requested a copy of that document. We haven't received it. I was just wondering what the status of that is.
What was the document that you're referring to, Dave?
The document in which Rosemary said Whitman was at the bottom of the list of contributions for schools.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Dave. I thought we went into this. It was from the DOR dashboard website, and you can look at the numbers. And if you calculate the population and you divide it, because you can do total amounts, but you have to divide it into per capita, you'll find those same numbers. Those are public record numbers. Are you asking me to go to the dashboard and pull all that for you? Because that's part of your job as a finance committee member, is to be utilizing that tool. And that's a huge database. That's meant for you to use. I just use the numbers that are on there. So if you want to do that, you are welcome to go do that. It's there. Department of Revenue dashboard sites. It gives you go in and you pull every town in Plymouth County, you'd mark each one, and it does a comparative right there for you.
So Rosemary,
to do
just for,
that. So, I mean, I can't give you the entire DOR dashboards site that's there for you. You can do that. That is your tool.
all right, so just for clarification, Rosemary, the information that you shared wasn't a single document. It is a compilation of information that you gleaned from
From
that.
it, from the DOR dashboard website, which you can, anybody can use. You can go on to the Department of Revenue dashboard, and it allows you to do the quick comparison of any towns. And you can look at everything, and then you can look at the per capita, how many people live in the towns, you know, how much people make, all of this information. It gives you this information. And it's something in the handbook for the Finance Committee is listed as a tool that we should be using. So that site is huge. So I just use Plymouth County, hold those towns, because you can mark each one, all the towns in Plymouth County, not the cities, because they're not comparable. They have a different financial structure. And we looked at what that was. It just comes up, it does the comparisons for you. It also does it in pie charts, and it can show you percentage of budgets. It's very interesting. But it should be something you should be using all the time. So I'm a little confused on why this is new.
All right, so,
Mr. Chairman?
so Dave, does that answer your question?
No,
Does
it
that-
doesn't surprise me that Rosemary is confused because she's totally misrepresenting what we
No,
discussed-
I actually
what we
have
discussed
not.
during- Excuse me, Rosemary.
No,
Excuse me.
David, you have to
No,
stop
excuse
doing
me,
this.
I'm
You're
talking. I give
harassing,
you
like,
plenty of
you
time to
harass
talk.
our committee
You
head.
wanna talk
Okay.
You
over me,
harass
so I'm gonna keep
individuals.
talking till
You
stop
last
talking.
week
Please
said
stop
that our
talking over
bills
me.
were going up
Please stop
double,
talking over
had
me.
All right, I'm gonna have
misinformation
to
that had to be
call-
corrected.
Please stop talking.
You
over me.
yourself,
Please
you're
stop
just
talking over me.
here as
Please
just
stop
a mean
talking over me.
person.
Please stop talking over me.
No, I will not, because you're
Why are you
misleading
talking over
and
me?
you're
I gave you plenty
nasty.
of time to talk, Rosemary. Very rude.
Okay, I'm
All right,
about
so-
ready to
So
ask.
it was
the
it was
mute.
discussed at the past meeting. There was a document discussed, presented to this committee as factual. We requested a copy of that document. In past meetings of this committee, we've discussed in the past that if anyone's going to bring information to this committee and discuss it as being factual and not opinion, that document should be provided. So that's why I asked it at that meeting. That's why I'm following up this meeting. So if Rosemary's unwilling to do that, that's fine. But stop bringing hearsay to the.
The chair.
Rosemary,
can I speak?
I'm gonna shut down the conversation. I'm just gonna
No,
put it
because
like
I
this.
really would like, I have just been accused of something that is untrue. And Mr. Cudero has a habit of doing this. So I'm going to be just straightforward. The Department of Revenue dashboard for every citizen, you can go on it and you can review all the money that's used. You can review how it's used in every single town. It would be an entire website. It's what we're supposed to be using. What Mr. Cudero is saying is misleading. And
Okay.
I'm disappointed, and it's
Rosemary,
not
I'm
new for
gonna
Mr.
have
Cudero to
to-
be misleading.
I'm prepared to
not new.
mute you. I don't want to
Mr.
mute
Chairman,
anybody.
Mr.
I
Chairman,
want
he
to have,
stated
I
that
want to
I was
have
being
a,
misleading, but didn't provide any documentation or discussion on how. I'm
Okay.
misleading.
Okay, Department of Revenue dashboard. You can go to the Department of Revenue dashboard, plug in each town, find their per capita amounts. And you can plug in what everybody pays for each department, police, fire. You can break that down per capita. And you can see those numbers for yourself. You can see what we're paying for all of those things. And you can see what people make, what the average income is. You can see all those things. They're public records. They're right there. And they're meant for every citizen to look at. So if I went in and punched in those, like you're supposed to be doing, and just punched in every town in Plymouth County, it would come right up. David,
All right,
are you
okay,
using the
is the-
dashboard, David? Are
Rosemary,
you
don't
are
know
you
what
Rosemary.
reviewing the
you're doing,
numbers?
so let's
Okay,
just-
Are you
Rosemary.
reviewing any numbers or comparatives?
Rosemary, please.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to shut the discussion down. What I'd like to do is to confirm with Dave that he understands that this isn't the document that you're looking for. No document exists for Rosemary to forward to the board, for the board then
I'm
to
tired.
review. It is a website. So it's a resource of information where the information that was shared by Rosemary can be gleaned. So there is no document that she can share. Are you satisfied with that?
No, I'm not, because if it's a website that identifies the information that she wanted to provide as factual, why can't she take a screenshot, print it, provide it to this committee that she agreed to do?
I will actually share the link with you, David. I will.
All right.
I will go
I
in.
think that
get
would
the
be
link.
sufficient. I'm ready to move on.
Useless. Another useless comment.
Rosemary, please share the link with with me and
I'm
I'll
doing it
forward
now.
to the committee. Okay? All right. So back to the line item then that we're discussing here with the communication from the district. Line item 175. Are we prepared to plug in the amount that the school committee has voted with the statutory assessment method in line 175? As you know, this has been holding up the rest of the work with the Article 2.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, can
Go
you
ahead, Lincoln.
see my screen with the Article 2?
Okay, so line 175, as it's shown here on the screen, the initial placeholder we had was for 5%, 16,135,762. And the communication from the district would indicate that we substitute in that placeholder 16,575,019.22. Is that the direction the board wants to go? Discussion. Is anybody opposed? Again, this is a worksheet. We're not taking a vote on this line item. We have plenty of time. We don't really have
I
plenty of
agree.
time.
I agree. That's the number that they gave us, and that should go in as a placeholder in that spot in column I on line 175.
Okay. Thank you, John. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman,
with John.
why are we veering off of the Madden recommendations?
That's the request that they made. So in that column requested 2022, we have that amount in everybody's department and what they have requested. So at this point right now, that's what they've requested. That's what should go in there. We're not voting it today, but just like every other department that they requested, whether it be police, fire, wherever it is, in that column requested 2022, that's where we put it so that we know what they've requested.
Okay.
Way I see
Is
it.
that clear, Dave?
Yep.
Okay, so by the same token, the non-mandated busing line, which is line 178, we had a placeholder in there at 401,177. That was a level funded placeholder, and what the district is requesting is $411,745. So same token,
Yep.
plugging the numbers in from the communication from the district is not a vote of the committee. It's merely a worksheet exercise.
Yep.
All right, so any discussion, I guess with respect to the non-mandated busing line, I think it's the committee's hope that there is some further discussion prior to town meeting with the superintendent. It did commit to reviewing that non-mandated busing line to see if there were some economies of scale or some, modifications that could lessen the impact to the taxpayers with respect to that line. Lincoln, is that still a possibility?
And as I mentioned last week, so the superintendent assured me that they would be looking at those efficiencies as they went forward with the busing routes for the next year and looking at what the busing contract looks like next year. So I can't speak for the school department and say, yes, that's going to happen. But the entity that would be making those changes would be the school department, and the superintendent has assured me that they'd be looking at that.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Further discussion on that line? Okay, so I guess now that those numbers are plugged in based on the communication from the district, we could go back. The purpose of the discussion tonight is to prepare Lincoln for the final numbers to be presented to the joint meeting between the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee on Article 2. So with the board's consent, we'll move back into the departments in order that weren't reviewed at last week's meeting. So I guess we'll start with the accountants line 25, and looking at the total accountant. So again, if there are some members of the committee that wish to discuss meetings that the department had, the department budget managers had with the Finance Committee, this particular meeting occurred on October 27th. I would invite anybody to chime in at any point. The only thing I want to say about this particular, because it's the first one that we're reviewing, the budget mailing was pretty specific with the guidelines to request level fund salaries. And so you will see that obviously Ken complied with his own directive by putting a 0% in his salary line. And the total increase for that department is 0.9%. So more or less, these are the kind of things that, you know, we want to talk about. So Lincoln, are you aware of the Board of Selectmen's direction for salaries? Are they looking to do a COLA, or you don't know?
I'm not aware of any official guidance, policy guidance from the Board of Selectmen on that.
Okay.
Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, some of that, it's possible that that guidance may have occurred before I was here. But and to be clear, Mr. Chairman, you're talking about non-union employees, correct? Or you talk what?
This particular one was department heads. Ken, just backing up to the budget mailing itself. I think the budget mailing, you know, you could just tell Lincoln what we included in the budget mailing for continuity.
That there were to level fund these salary positions in order to, because that would at least be a baseline to work with. I don't know if contract mandated increases had to be included, because I know there are steps and contracts that kind of dictate where those go. And I know some department heads included those in their submissions. But the guidance in the mailing was to level fund the salary lines, from what I recall.
Okay.
And
Thank you, Ken. All right, so I just wanted to mention it with, it happens to be Ken's department to come up first. That's all. Just for continuity, you're going to find some of those budget managers didn't follow that guidance and some did. That's all. As we go through the Article 2.
if I could, Mr. Chairman, so I can just tell you that, you know, I think the general, whether this is an official policy directive from the board or not, I think there's a general understanding that there's a desire to continue to have a level services amount of budget. At least I'm talking about on the town side now. You know, I think the school is a separate conversation, but on the town side, to have a level services, you know, level of budget within the financial parameters that we have. That's, you know, that said, I think there's, you know, the union negotiations are ongoing now. We'll see where those go out. Obviously, you know, what is recommended to town meeting is in part, you know, conversation with the Board of Selectmen and in part from you folks, but I can tell you that my intention would not be to leave non-union employees behind and have, you know, increases, if they were to happen, only occur for union employees. I don't think that's fair. Whether my recommendation, you know, would be accepted or not, I don't know where the union negotiations are going to go right now. We're in the middle of them, but it wouldn't be my intention to leave non-union employees at a disadvantage vis-a-vis union employees. So I just so the board, just so this committee is not surprised, you know, if it does end up at some nominal increased recommendation from me. I'm just telling you that out loud. I don't think, I just think as a equity fairness issue, I don't think that's fair, but that's my opinion.
Okay. All right, and I guess just for historical perspective as well, the board last year, the finance committee was working at 0% due to the budget crisis, was looking at 0% increases for department heads, for instance. And the Board of Selectmen voted to incorporate cost of living across the board. So, like I said, I mean, there's a certain amount of work that has to be done, jointly with the Board of Selectmen on this Article 2 and the entire warrant. So just want to make you aware of how past practice, that's all.
Appreciate it.
All right, any other comments about the meeting with the accountant? And I don't have everybody on the screen at once, so I'm going to keep scrolling. So if you have a question, you can just kind of
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
I'm sorry I missed last week's meeting, but how does the item in line item 12 play into, for example, item 27? As we go through the budgets, who is getting the stipends indicated in line item 12? And how is that reflected in salaries?
Okay, I guess Lincoln or Ken.
That's raising his, go ahead, Ken. Thank you.
That is the stipend that is given to the assistant accountant, the assistant collector, and the assistant clerk. Those are, I believe they're in their contracts. There are specific amounts that are written up for that, payable at the beginning of the fiscal year. I don't know if those are negotiated with each contract. I'm not a part of those, so I can't speak for that, but those are the three positions that are involved in that line item.
Okay, and so whether it's this particular item 27 or future ones that we'll be looking at, the actual salary going to the people in those spots is whatever is shown in the later line items, plus some money that comes out of 12.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, John, thank you for your question. All right, so moving on to the next department would be the assessors. So that's a line 34 through 41, and the total assessor is projected here at 2.5%. Does anybody wish to make any comments about the assessor's budget based on the meeting that occurred on December 8th? If anybody has any notes that they want to bring up. So I guess the expense line in that particular department is line 40 is up 28%. There's a discussion about revaluation and the expenses related to that too. So that is something that fluctuates that department's budget as well.
Rick,
Go ahead.
I have a quick, and this is a recollection from that meeting, although I did not go back and review the YouTube video of it. But it was my recollection that when the assessor, the principal assessor, appeared before our committee, she mentioned that in order to come up with the 2.5% total increase in the assessor's budget, the $838 was inserted in there. And it was just, I thought it was a memorable comment that there wasn't any real justification, but sort of the motivation was to bring my budget in up to the 2.5% increase. That's where I put the 838.
Okay, that's important information. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? Anything with this particular department?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead.
Subsequent within the last week, I had some conversation with the principal assessor. And I just as a preview, I am intending to include an amount. We're clarifying exactly what that amount is, but it'll be a ceiling of $8,000 additionally in the for expenses there. Specifically, there is a Department of Revenue appellate tax board ruling that requires a change in the way that utilities properties are assessed. And that change in the way that utilities properties are assessed requires more work from Patriot, which is our assessing contractor. And we really don't have much of a choice but to spend more money to do that. So that the expense line will be higher. I'm working out exactly how much higher it'll be, but just as a preview.
Okay, thank you, Lincoln. Anybody else? Okay, moving into the treasurer collector. So the treasurer collector meeting occurred on November 24th. So that lines 44 to 54, and the total increase looks like 0.1%. So just for discussion, following the budget meeting, then a request for a reserve fund transfer of $10,871.40 was approved, and that was to outsource payroll due to an employee who was not replaced. So Lincoln, are you familiar with the whole dynamic of how that evolved?
I am, yes. I've been in close contact with the treasurer collector on that
Very good.
transition.
All right, anybody else? Anything on that? Ken?
You're muted, Ken.
Ken, you're muted.
So when Mary Beth had her meeting with the committee, her department then was a lot different than what it looks like now, with bodies in different positions. So I'm going to get, and we'll have corrected salaries for lines 47 through 50. My belief is that as a whole, that number will come down. I don't know by how much, but I believe in all 4 of those lines, there are, or at least 3 of them, there will be new people in those positions from when she had her meeting with you guys.
Okay, thank you for that update. Any other questions regarding that department? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the last week, the law account was discussed. So we moved to technology. So technology's meeting occurred on October 27th. I do have somewhat limited notes for that particular meeting. So I think one of the big things for this particular department was the request to add an individual to the employee list. So that is a support technician that was requested for fiscal 2022, as you can plainly see. So I guess the discussion for that particular request was, that department obviously is a critical component of the town, the technology department, and the fact that what we were told about, how coverage was, made. Frank Lynham, the former town administrator, filled in on a regular basis when there was a need, or Josh was required to take some time off or have a vacation day. We had somebody here to fill in, and I would say that probably, and I could probably get a confirmation from Lincoln, that that's probably not something where he's just getting started as the town administrator that he's going to be able to do. So my own opinion, based on the meeting that we had with Josh, that is something that this board should take a hard look at, even though this isn't a growth year. I think that that department has requested some help for many years. So I certainly defer to the rest of the board for opinions on that. Does anybody feel strongly that that a person to be supplemented into that department is not needed.
I think
Like said,
I think we all know it's needed. The question is, this isn't probably the year to do it. And, you know, and I think it really falls on the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator on whether or not they approve adding that in. It's not up to us. I mean, we can try to fund it, but if they're not behind inserting the position, then, you know, I think we're kind of wasting our time. But it, you know, we all know he needs some kind of backup. But I think we all agree that, or we would at least discuss the fact that $65,000 is money we don't have right now.
Right. Okay. Thank you, John. Lincoln.
I think it's, I would think, I would hope there wouldn't be any serious discussion about how a town of our size and an operation of our size should have more than one IT position. That said, the financial reality, I mean, I don't think I'm previewing anything that is a surprise to anyone here. The financial reality is I don't see how fiscal year 2022 is that year, but clearly there's a need for more than one person doing IT. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you, Lincoln. Anybody else on that department from recollection for the meeting?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
I agree that there is a need for assistance in this area. And I understand that there's a concern about $65,000. Had I been at last meeting, I would have indicated that the town assistant administrator was a position that I wouldn't be supporting. But I could see if somebody got creative and combined, sort of like what Frank Lyman was doing before, a willingness to work with Lincoln, but also be available as a backup to the system's needs. I could see supporting some type of a dual job type situation, which would accommodate both the town administrator and also the town technical director.
Okay, John, thank you. Yeah, just so you know, the last week's meeting, Lincoln did discuss the plans to move forward with the selection interview process for an assistant town administrator.
No,
So,
I'm aware of that. I did watch the meeting after.
Okay,
So I am aware of that. It's just that it's not necessarily something I would agree with.
I see. Okay. All right, thank you, John.
Again, getting creative with those two requests, I could see myself supporting something on that idea.
Okay,
I would echo that sentiment too.
John, same here. I'll echo the same thing.
Creativeness,
Absolutely,
creative and out of the box.
absolutely.
okay, thank you very much. That's really good information, I think, moving forward.
Do we have any examples of that in other towns?
Who you directed the question to, Rosemary?
Anybody who would be able to answer it. Does Lincoln know of any examples of that in other towns? Or does John know of any examples of that in other towns, just to get a sense of what other towns are paying for something like that?
I'm
Well,
not.
we had it in this town with Frank.
What do you mean? We had Frank doing IT work?
Yeah, that was
Josh,
Josh's discussion. He made it very clear that Frank was someone that could fill in that role based on his experience in that department. So,
I think,
but are you
I
looking
think
for?
I think it's dangerous in a way of like being able to erase data or do something to both play that role. It sounds like a crossover you might not want. Somebody who has the IT information and part of the public body. You would seem to want to have a barrier between those two so that, you know, the data is preserved, I guess.
Okay, Rosemary,
That's
thank
what
you.
I would.
All right. Anybody else for that department?
Rick, I
Go
agree
ahead,
with, I agree with John. It's not just with Frank, it's just overall utilize what we have for labor, spread the wealth around, and let Mr. Heineman make his decision what he wants to do, and we'll have to back it. We need to do that. And I think that we have to back Lincoln, what he needs to get done. We hired him, or actually the town hired him, and the executives of the branch, the selectmen hired him. So we need to support, Lincoln, anything we can do.
right.
That's
So,
all.
so what I'm getting for a sense from the board is, from the fiscal standpoint, not obviously the personnel standpoint, but if we were looking to hire an assistant town administrator,
Yeah.
one that had some IT background might be beneficial.
Right.
Is that more or less what you're saying now?
We wear many different hats. I'm in the healthcare industry. I wear 10 different hats every day. That's what we do. And every town is doing the same thing. Smaller towns like Whitman, Hanson, they're doing the same thing.
Okay,
We got to wear many different hats, and Lincoln knows that. So I have full confidence in Lincoln that he can do that.
okay, thank you, Al. All right, then we're gonna move on to the next department, the town clerk. I think we talked about this department quite in detail at our recent meeting. So I think Lincoln is aware of all of the particulars about the salary line increase request at 7.6%. And Lincoln, if you could scroll down a little further, we could see the bottom line for that department is at 4.6%. So anybody want to, the meeting that occurred on November 24th. So again, I think we had this discussion at quite some length. I don't know that we need to talk any more about that particular aspect of the salary line. I think we, like I said,
So,
exhausted the discussion on that completely. Does anybody else have anything else from the meeting with the town clerk that they would like to bring to
I
this
don't know
meeting?
if you can see me, Rick, but I have a comment to make.
Go
It's
ahead, Kathleen. Yes, thank you.
It's my recollection that somewhere in Article 2, there is a line that reflects actually a vote by the Board of Selectmen to increase the wages that are paid to the folks who show up on election day and serve as poll takers. I'm not sure what their names are. I mean, what the title is, but I think that's somewhere in this budget. It was to raise their salary to the minimum wage, and that has to be incorporated in Article 2 somewhere, and I'm pretty sure it was in the town clerk's budget.
Good point, Kathleen. Good point. It was.
Okay,
Rick,
yeah,
my
I see
my other
that brings us,
comment-
the vote of the Board of Selectmen brings us into compliance with the minimum wage statute, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Mr.
That's
Chairman,
how I recall that as well.
if I may, I believe that amount is not in the clerk line, but the registrar's line, line 77, salary meeting election workers. Am I correct on that, Ken?
It actually falls into the, I don't think it's line 1, but it's the first line in the article, town meetings and elections.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is line 1, Ken.
Okay. I did disseminate some information to the committee a couple weeks ago about the FY22 budget in this line as it pertains to the last election cycle. And I think the increase in the wage can easily be absorbed with what they have. But unless there are more meetings to be had, aside from the annual town meeting and the town elections, this is a line that I think we could look at if we're trying to adjust somewhere.
Okay. Thank you, Ken. Yeah,
No, I think Don does a fantastic job as the town clerk. Now, what were her hours? What are her hours, Lincoln? Is she full-time 40 hours? My understanding was she was less than 32 hours.
I'm sorry, the town clerk's hours?
Yes.
Yeah, well, so not to put too fine a point on it, but the town clerk's hours
Yeah.
are she's an elected position. She's answering
Correct.
only to the voters.
Right.
So I don't know precisely what hours she's keeping right now. I see her at town hall a lot, so I know
No,
she's,
no.
but I mean, her hours are what she makes them to be.
What's it based off of though?
As far as what her hourly rate is, I
Yeah.
think, I mean, I guess I would say nothing per se. What's the tradition? Each town has a different tradition. What is true in state law is that
Right.
town meeting votes a particular line
Right.
of a salary for every elected position in town. So in our case, that's the treasurer collector and the town clerk. As
Right.
far as what their particular hours are, it's unless the bylaw says otherwise, which it doesn't in this town, the hours are whatever the town clerk says their hours are. But I can tell you, I mean, I know she's here.
No, it's not a matter of that though. It was based off something else. And it's not no disrespect to Dawn. It just actually a question for 5% increase when situations we have now, I've never seen a 5% increase in a long time for the business that I'm in. And that's all. And that's all. And I'm sure Ken would now, Ken, do you work 40 hours a week?
I depends. Depends what's going on.
No.
Point of order, why are we discussing employees' hours and things like that?
I'm just talking about the town accountants. That's all. Go back to that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Al.
Bring up a point, that's all.
All right, very good. All right, anybody else on any discussion regarding town clerk's department? Okay. That brings us to the facilities manager. So as a follow-up from our last meeting, I think that's the next one in line, is it not? Town clerk. Conservation Commission, Planning Board, Conservation Planning Board, Board of Appeals, Custodial. So custodial maintenance, I guess this was what we discussed last week, was to get a hold of the facilities manager so he could present some information for us on this particular budget. Line items 91 to 97 inclusive for the custodial maintenance service. So I would suggest we hold off discussion on this until I actually have not heard back from Bob Curran on its availability for next week. I did hear back from Sarah Lansing, who was very eager to share information about the Veterans Affairs Department. So I think Lincoln committed to following up with Bob to make sure if he's available that he comes to our meeting next week.
I will do that.
Okay,
Mr.
thank
Chairman?
you. Yes, John. New.
I had a question, if we could just jump back to the custodial. The maintenance technician, I'm just curious, is that an individual or is that on a needs basis, repair contracts that are let out?
So John, our idea for this is to wait till Bob Curran is here to answer that question specifically. If you could bring it back to next week's meeting, unless somebody has the answer.
No.
I think the whole idea was to defer to the facilities manager.
So he's responsible for 91 through 99.
As the facilities manager, it's Lincoln, the town administrator's contention that is correct.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. All right, so we'll hold off on that. So moving past town reports, moving past mailing and duplicating, we get to the police department. So the meeting with the police department occurred November 10th. I do have a lot of notes and budget backup that was submitted by the chief regarding this particular budget. Does anybody have any general comments that they would like to make regarding the police department's budget submission? Anybody? So one of the things I just wanted to bring up, as I said, the notes were pretty detailed. So the bottom line for that department right now as it stands is 6% over last year's. So one of the items that was discussed was, obviously we need to provide the safety of the citizens and officers of the department. And I fully understand the need or the wish to fund all shifts. But as it was explained for as many years as I've been on this committee, that of the 617 shifts that were unfilled, there were 271 shifts remaining, and after the shifts not filled by contract were subtracted. So he did provide us an explanation sheet. I would imagine that that was something that was also provided to Lincoln. So he would have that information, but that does reflect $129,776 that has been historically referred to by the former chief as that department's skin in the game. So I guess if we're looking to level service, we're looking for level services. That $129,776 has not historically been part of that budget. So in the dollar amount, obviously was different in years past, but I think just as a general discussion, and I know, it's certainly your purview to have a discussion with the chief to talk about, the budget and the ways to move away from a 6% increase from any department. But that's just my own observation from the meeting. Anybody else? Anything on that particular department?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, John.
the 6% is at a point at which we don't know how much more will go into line 123 because it's under negotiation.
Okay, Lincoln, do you want to clarify that? Are you talking about collective bargaining agreement?
Right.
Okay,
That is correct. And it's further, I won't say complicated, but that negotiation, just FYI, will likely be a little later than other unions because there's a pending there's a pending decision to be made by the state Division of Labor Relations on a possible change in the union representation of the police officers, and so negotiations really can't start in earnest until it's determined what happens with where the officers, members of that union, are represented by. So it's even a little bit more complicated than what you say, John. But yes, that is correct.
okay, thank you.
Okay,
John.
thank you.
That answer your question, John?
Yes, it did.
Very good point. Thank you very much. Anybody else on the police department? Okay, we'll move on to the fire department. So this department meeting occurred on November 17th. There was very little backup provided from that meeting. I don't know if anybody else recalls. There were really not a lot of information. The total budget increase for that particular department is 5.3%. Anybody have any comments regarding anything about that meeting?
Just quickly, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
It's this is only my second year on the committee, but it's 2 for 2 that this position called the Administrative Deputy Chief is being requested to be funded. And I know it was part of a contract negotiation that was not funded last year. Do we have the discretion as a town not to fund it again this year?
Lincoln, can you answer that without compromising collective bargaining discussion?
Cannot, I'm sorry. It is
Okay.
definitely the subject of negotiation.
Okay,
Okay, thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman,
Thank you for your question,
I can
Kathleen.
clarify that.
Dave?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
Every single line item you see there is, I forget how you put it, but is subject to town meeting. Everything you see there is subject to approval through town meeting. So town meeting has the ability to either approve that line item or not approve that line item. So is that
Good
simple?
point. Thank you, Dave. Okay, anybody else in this department?
Yeah, I have some more.
Okay, go ahead.
So I mean, again, I don't think it's a growth year. I don't think we should be adding positions. But also, I'm sure Lincoln's aware of it. Sorry, let me take that back. I don't want to put words into Lincoln's mouth, but in past years, this town approved an override. That override was recommended by the fire chief in order to have more hires, more firemen hired. The reasoning of that was to increase every shift by one firefighter. The way it was advertised was this money was going to come out of ambulance receipts, so it's not going to affect the budget. Take that, for what it's worth. However, now that the ambulance receipts are now within Article 2, that increase of personnel significantly impacts Article 2. And I'll leave my comment as that.
Great point, Dave.
Okay, Dave, thank you very much. Okay, anybody else on the fire department? All right, so we move to line item 145, again, inspectional services. We met with the Bob Curran on November 10th. Again, very little backup documents were supported. And again, we talked a little bit about line 145 being the salary line and why that's a decrease. Again, related to the 555 hybrid Lexington and the fact that he was given a waiver, I guess, by the Board of Selectmen last year. But right now, so the total department is negative 3.7%. Anybody else, anything to add to the discussion on the inspectional services budget? If there is further questions, likely we'll have Bob in our next meeting too, so feel free to bring additional questions to that meeting if you have anything follow up on that particular department. Okay. The next one, the DPW, we got Whitman Hansel Regional School District. We went through that, and then we get line 181 to line 189, and inclusive of the total divisional labor for the Department of Public Works. Right now is looking at a 0.6% increase for that department. That meeting occurred on December 1st. So again, not a lot of backup in my folder from the meeting with that department. Anybody have anything that they want to bring up regarding the meeting with the DPW? Okay, and the water sewer also occurred on the December 1st. That meeting with Dennis Smith went over that particular budget. So again, a different pot of money, I guess, to discuss that particular department, but of course, no less important to our overall impact to our taxpayers, our recommendations with regard to Article 2 for that department as well. Anybody have anything that they want to bring up regarding that meeting? Okay. All right, the health department.
I'm sorry, Rick, I was a little slow coming unmuted here.
Go ahead, John.
The water and sewer, you're talking about the enterprise budget? Is that what you were just talking
Right,
about?
the
Okay.
funding for the department comes out of the enterprise.
I just have a question for Ken and Lincoln. In your budget release on April 13th, will you have the enterprise budget updated to reflect the increased revenues of the potential sewer rate increase, as well as the projected debt service, or that possibly may be included in that? I don't know if it's too early for that, or I'm just, usually we didn't see anything in the enterprise until the very end. And I'm just curious if that's going to be part of your April 13th presentation.
I did talk to Dennis about that a little bit today. I think it's still a little too early. We're not sure, or at least he's not sure how much the project is going to cost yet, which means we don't know what the rates are going to be. So there's still a lot. There's still a lot to figure out in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
Lincoln, do you want to follow up at all, or does that answer your question, John?
Yeah, I mean, I just,
Froze, John.
Oh,
want to make sure that we have ample time to understand it and review it before town meeting.
understood. Yep. Thank you very much.
So I can provide a little insight into the rate discussion. So the commissioners, the Public Works Commissioners at their last meeting did vote to raise the rates partially with the expectation of a further rate increase in the fall. And it appears from town council that it is legal, and therefore it's, to be clear, the commissioners took a vote to increase the rates by an amount in April. We do retroactive billing, so that's billing for water that is already for sewage, and in this case sewage, because those were the rates that they voted to increase in this instance. In retroactively for sewage service already provided, and the opinion from town council seems to be that that is legal, and so that the commissioners did take that vote to raise the rates effective in April. As Ken says, the exact dollar amount for what the project, if approved by town meeting, will cost is a little bit in flux. It's a little bit clearer now, but I think it still may be in flux for a little bit longer. But certainly if that information is available in a timely fashion, it will be included in the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else on the water sewer?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, John Noon.
I don't want to add money to the budget, but line 195 seems to be kind of a typical 16.5. We'll throw it in there. But with the major sewer project, is that going to be realistic, or police coverage?
That wouldn't fall under that part of the budget. That would fall
Okay.
in, yeah.
Yeah.
That's for DPW coverage, not for water sewer. And I would think the police coverage would be included in the project estimates themselves. So, the bid would include all the police coverages necessary for that particular project.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely correct. Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you, John and John. Okay, so that we'll move to the Health Department. That meeting occurred on January 5th. I think that was one of our last meetings with departments. Obviously, that department is a little bit in flux. The total health department stands now at a 3.5% increase. Obviously, with the COVID-19 and the pandemic expenses, this is a department that was, played a very active role in the whole scenario. So anybody have any questions, comments that they would like to bring forward regarding the health department?
Yeah, Rick, I have a question. Oh, Kathleen, go ahead.
Well, thank you, John. My question is, does this line item reflect the current hire? Because I know there was a change in personnel and we have a new director of the health department, new health agent.
So I guess the question is to Lincoln as to whether the salary requirements were negotiated differently.
Right. Do you want to take that, Ken? I believe this does reflect the new director's salary, and if it doesn't, the April 13th presentation will reflect it. But
That should, I believe the health inspector has a 2% increase in his contract. and it doesn't look like that was reflected there, because I don't believe I had the contract as of February 9th. So that's a change we'll have to make.
So I guess the point is, to the extent that this number from February 9th may not reflect the reality of what the new health inspector's contract says, it will on April 13th.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. John?
And I had a question too regarding the clerical. I know in the discussion that we had with the health department that there was a lot of extra work being done with contact tracing and all of that within that department. And my question would be, would there be some consideration in looking at the long-term, do we think that that type of work will continue throughout 22 with that department, or do we think it'll fall off? I mean, we see a huge increase in line 199. We see a huge increase in line 202. And I'm just wondering if there might be some consideration that we use. I know it's not CARES Act money anymore, but the new American money that's coming out, I know we're going to get a lot there. I don't know if that's something that we look at. I'm not suggesting it. I'm just saying, you know, maybe we consider looking at that more clearly when the time comes, is if that's going to be all the time now, or is that going to fade off after new normal comes around again?
I'm glad you brought that up, John, because that is definitely a line that I'm going to take a closer look at over the coming week to see if it reflects what we expect the new reality to be. There are some more CARES Act monies from the original quote unquote stimulus from a year ago that the town will continue to have access to. And those are the monies that we'll be using for that before regularly appropriated monies. So absolutely, there may be a change there. I don't know quite the answer to that yet, but it's definitely something on my mind as well. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So one point there too is we want to make sure we keep a clear definition between budgeted items and CARES Act
Right.
reimbursement, so that, you know, we're not, you know, having any effect on the ability for the town to get reimbursed for expenses that we put in through that. So again, just wanted to make sure that we keep that kind of separate, any budget discussion. All right, thank you very much, John and Lincoln. So we'll move to the Council on Aging. That meeting took place on October 27th. So we have a new person in that department, and she met with us to talk about the challenges of starting out, you know, as another new employee for the town in the department. So that department right now stands at a 1.9% decrease over the budget for voted in 2021. Anybody have any comments on that meeting that we had with the Council on Aging? Budget manager. So I guess one of the only things, you know, that we want to talk about, Lincoln, is, and with this department, but with all departments really, is strategic planning and the aging members of our community, and how we want to make sure that we consider allocating adequate amounts going forward. You know, I think that should be part of the discussion. Hopefully the meeting that we have with the Board of Selectmen will include a little bit about strategic planning and how we are looking to, as the chairman, Carl Kowalski, put it, what kind of a community we want to be. So I mean, this department, like I said, historically has not gotten the financial help that it really should have gotten in the past several years. So just want to keep that in mind.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add to that, actually just today, the Council on Aging Director, Mary Holland, and I interviewed 2 finalists for the open outreach coordinator position. And that was something that we both stressed very strongly to the 2 candidates, was how much we wanted to make sure that we come roaring out of the gate as we recover from COVID-19, particularly with outreach to our most vulnerable folks, some of our most vulnerable residents and seniors. So that is definitely something that's front and center, especially as we come out of COVID and make sure that the programming there is really robust. So.
Okay, thank you, Lincoln. The next animal control, I think we talked about this a little bit last week. That department is under the purview of the town administrator, and I believe you gave an update on where that particular department is. And the Veterans Department, again, we look forward to our meeting next week with Sarah Lansing to talk a little bit about that particular budget. Right now, it's at 4.26% increase, or 4.2% increase from voted 2021 budget. Anybody have anything? Well, like I said, we'll save that discussion for next week when we meet with the budget manager. All right, so the library, let's see when that meeting occurred. Meeting was on December 8th. Right now, that budget, the total library department is at 2.9% increase over last year. You know, what I took out of that particular meeting was, you know, I think it's important that we maintain our accreditation. I think that the library director and all of the staff do an exemplary job to ensure that we continue to have an accredited library. And so, you know, I guess going forward, any discussion about the library budget, it has got to include that in the discussion. So right now, the budget does reflect the ability to stay accredited. Anybody, anything else to add to the meeting with the library? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to recreation. I believe that will be the last department. That meeting also occurred on December 8th. Again, a new person in that department, some new challenges to reinvigorate, I guess, that whole department to make sure that we're providing some services for the town. Anybody have anything to add to the discussion that we had with the recreation department?
Rick, just a question. What are we doing with the pool? Is it opening up this year? Do we know anything about that? The salaries going to continue if the pool's closed?
Lincoln, did you have a conversation with the recreation director recently?
We've been actually, it's funny you asked that. We were actually playing phone tag today. The Recreation Commission is due to have a meeting on Wednesday, I believe, this week. And I intend to be attending that. I know the new recreation director has some big plans about, again, roaring out of the gate as we get out of COVID. So I know the intention is definitely to, as long as it's within the guidelines from the governor, that definitely the pool will be open. I think it's just a question of whether or not the state government allows that or not.
This may be a question for Lincoln too as well. Lincoln, I served about 10 years on the board of Whitman Baseball Softball Association. What are we doing with the funds that come in from outside towns that play in our fields? Where is that? Is there a cash flow system? Is a cash flow there somewhere, but where does it actually get deposited to? Into general funds, or what are we doing with that type of monies?
That comes into the recreation revolving fund.
Okay.
That's where those funds come. The
Okay.
approval of any expenditures out of that fund
Yeah.
need to be approved by the Recreation Commission. So
Okay.
that's the short answer.
So I think we had an accounting balance, not balance. There was just no receipts last year or the year before. Can we tighten that up a little bit with regards to receipts from outside towns coming in and whatnot, accountability?
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I think, I think the new director is going to be a key component of that.
Sure.
And certainly during this past calendar year, a year from now, the receipts were very limited. I think, I don't know if Kevin has those numbers handy, but certainly they were limited to non-existent because of
Right.
just the situation that's going on.
That's
But,
right.
but certainly I think there needs to be, that's part of the conversation about how the Recreation Commission would intend, and the Recreation Director would intend to be utilizing those monies. Each year, the amount of monies that are allowed to be spent from that revolving fund are approved by town meeting.
Yeah.
So that's one of the points of conversation is
Sure.
that at the right level? So, yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Al. Thank you, Lincoln. So that exhausts all of the department meeting wrap up. Lincoln, I hope some of the information that we provided will help you and guide you as you look to put numbers within Article 2. Do you have any specific questions for the board at all based on the feedback?
No, I think that was helpful. Thank you all. That was helpful to me. Thank you.
All right. So that will move us into our old business items, subcommittee reports, Building Facilities Capital Expenditure Committee. Dave, anything to report out of your committee?
If you don't mind, I'd rather defer to the town administrator first and then follow up anything that after he has anything to state.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll go to the Middle School Building Committee first. John, anything to report out of that?
Make sure I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
Yes, we had a meeting today. Basically, it wasn't a very long meeting, but we were updated on where we stood with the MSBA. The MSBA has several modules, with basically phases in which you have to pass through in order to complete the whole project. It's very well laid out and very complicated, honestly. We have finished Module 1. Everything was submitted to the MSBA on schedule. They are reviewing our submissions now. From what we were told by the unnamed source within the MSBA, that everything looks good from what we did. I believe they have a meeting on April 14th, the MSBA and the representatives from the school, in which they will be given the final go-ahead to move into Module 2. Module 2 is laid out. There's 3 different steps here. The first thing we would do is advertise and look for an owner's project manager. That's somebody that's throughout the entire project, basically is kind of like the advisor. Basically would oversee the entire project on behalf of the town. After that is done, we would then hire a designer. And then at that point, we would then move into the feasibility study. The big question that we laid out, or that I asked today, honestly, was about the decision on whether or not we're going to build a 5 through 8 school or a 6 through 8 school. And the administration has made it very clear that they prefer a 5 through 8 school. However, the final decision will be made by the committee and probably even by the Board of Selectmen, if I understood the documentations correctly, on where we decide to go. And I just wanted to make sure we had a clear understanding of the difference in the cost to the taxpayers of the town between the 5 through 8 building, which would be significantly more expensive than a 6 through 8 building. And until we move further along the process, we won't have that information until we get into the feasibility study.
Okay, question, Kathleen.
Okay, first, John, I want to thank you for the time that you commit to this committee. I know it's a labor of love on your behalf, but it's an incredibly important resource that this town needs to provide to our children. Having said that, I'm furious that this discussion of 5 through 8 versus 6 through 8 is being held behind closed doors. I've heard nothing at a school committee meeting, and I go to all of them. And this is, I think, being forced on us in Whitman because Hanson chose to close McQuon and move their 5th graders over to their middle school. That shouldn't be forced on Whitman.
The,
And there should
the,
be discussion in public so that people, parents of children should know this.
the video of today's meeting is already posted on the WHCA YouTube page. There was some, direct discussion by the superintendent and also the assistant superintendent on why the district prefers a 5 through 8 model, educationally wise. And I think, more information on that will be brought forth before the final decision is made.
Okay, thanks.
Good point,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you, Kathleen. Rosemary?
When we originally took the vote to accept this, wasn't it 5 through 8? I mean, wasn't it presented as 5 through 8 in the
Yeah,
history? I remember Jeff doing something, maybe asking Jeff about the history of it, because I think it started that way. And,
I know-
maybe there's been a secondary discussion about changing it, but
When they submitted it to the MSBA, it was submitted as a 5 through 8 building.
5 through 8 building, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that it was accepted, okay,
Well, it
As-
hasn't been I forget the terminology he used, but when they applied to the MSBA, the application, they had it as a 5 through 8, which I didn't find that out until today, but.
so what was the process in that? There must have been some sort of process. Maybe we need to speak to Jeff on this. That's all.
Well, I think it'll come out in the next, next couple meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Lincoln, did you want to add to that?
Chairman, if I may, so I have the pleasure of serving on that committee with John as well and with Dave. So I wholeheartedly agree with John, and the other, sentiment expressed by this committee about, I think, there needs to be a robust conversation about what grades are in that school, if and when it's built. And, that was one reason that, to be frank, I really wanted to make sure that meeting happened today of the subcommittee. So I definitely, for what it's worth, I completely agree that, that subcommittee and other folks in town need to have a say on what grades are going to be in that school. And I think we heard that from the superintendent today, that, we wanted some other input on that. And what he had communicated is that the MSBA itself will have some input on that, and we'll find out where that process goes. But to be clear, there's been no decision made on that at this moment, not from my perspective.
Okay, thank you, Lincoln. Rosemary, follow up?
When the towns accepted it, was it written as 5 through 8? Both town, I mean, when Whitman, when it was on the ballot to accept it,
Well,
was it written as 5 through 8?
It wasn't on the ballot. We
No,
voted at town, it was an article at town meeting.
Yeah, article,
I-
sorry, article.
Yeah, it wasn't.
I went back and checked.
I can
Please
check it.
check that, because that's
I have
really
it right
important,
here, honestly.
because it wouldn't be Jeff or anyone else at that point. It would be,
To see if the town will approve 850 borrowing authorized by the Whitman to pay the cost of a feasibility study.
that's all.
I'll skim through it real quick here to see if I see anything. I don't
Yep.
see anything real quick about that says anything about the grades in the article. It was Article P5.
All right, so I'm sure we're
All right,
gonna have some
thank you.
follow-up discussion about that within the committee. Yeah. All right, thank you for your questions and your answers. Thank you very much. Anything else? I know you had questions for John on the middle school building committee. All right, seeing none. I think we talked about all of the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District items on our standing old business. Anybody else have anything they wanted to add? Okay.
Rick,
John,
I
go
have
ahead.
something. Sorry. Just kind of an overall Article 2 comment. Since inserting the request from the district and the busing, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, I've been trying to keep my worksheet up to date as much as possible. by my calculations, and I'm just going to say an estimate now. I just see my estimate, and I want to be clear, it's my estimate that we, based on the request of all the departments, we're well over a $1.1 million deficit by my estimate. I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't envy you, Lincoln, and your challenges in the next couple weeks to balance this baby, because there's a lot to it now. We all want to do the best we can to fund as many departments fully as possible, but we, have to realize there's a lot of hard work ahead of us here.
Okay, thank you, John, for that. Lincoln, do you have any overview that you want to provide the committee about the direction, or you'd rather just wait till you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather wait at this moment, but.
Okay, very good. Rosemary, did you have something?
Yes, just quickly, I sent you an email and I wanted to just give a quick overview. It's an email just for the public, also can use this information. It's called the Department of Revenue Dashboard Trend. It allows you to trend certified information from all towns in Massachusetts, from anything the DOR gets, across time and towns, and you can pick and choose. There is a tutorial in there that shows you how to do it. So if there's any confusion, go over to the tutorial and look at it. I would recommend that everybody use it. Anybody watching, it gives great information, and you can, discern comparatives from towns, dates. They even have graphs that they show, pie charts, size of budgets, all of that. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. All right, John Noon.
In line with that, I wasn't going to bring it up, but I will. I have not gone to the Department of Revenue site, but how is regional school districts factored into comparing individual towns that have their own school systems versus regional districts that should be better funded by the state than a regular town school budget?
Rosemary, do you want to answer the question?
You can break out regional schools separately to do your own comparisons. It really is a site that you can create your own, you can compare any piece of data that you want from. It's pretty remarkable. So it's unlimited. That's why it's hard to print out a page for somebody. It's an unlimited resource. And once you go, you'll see what I mean. So you can break out all of the regional schools, but DESE also has a better, I think I would go to the DESE website to get more of the educational stuff, because it breaks it out more, a lot better. And I'd also, again, I would recommend you to the Suzanne Bump's audit on regional schools, because that goes into the trends on why regional schools are cheaper, like what the discount is, the cost of scale, when we meet it, at what point is in there. So I'd read over the Suzanne Bump's regional audit. I know it's from 2018, but it's still relevant. And then I would look at that percentages used in that to kind of analyze the data from the dashboard or DESE for that.
All right, thank you, Rosemary. John?
The
Did I
only
answer your question, John?
Do you want me to send you the audit?
Sure, that'd be.
Okay,
The
I'll
only
do that.
reason I was involved on the school committee back when we regionalized. And the only reason we supported it, at least I supported it, was the money. I wasn't crazy about the superintendent that ended up running the whole shebang. And there were other issues that I had, but laying off teachers every single year and watching people 10 feet away from you burst into tears over not knowing whether they were going to be rehired or not was enough for a lot of us to be convinced that getting more money from the state And that was the big pitch for regionalization, was a worthwhile approach 40 plus years ago.
Okay, thank you.
I would love to sit down with you, John, and go over it, because I've gone and read some of the town reports where they say, oh, we're gonna get all this state aid. And then we go into the year they get it and they're like, oh, darn it, the state aid went to the school, not the town. So it's conflicting information. So I'd love to sit down with you and get some history, if you don't mind, if you ever have some time.
Okay,
Thank you.
Kathleen, thank you.
Just one quick comment I'd like to make is that one of the big impacts on the school budget this year is that both towns, Hanson and Whitman, have seen their minimum local contribution increased significantly to a total of over $700,000. I think it's 300 for Hanson and 400 and something for us. And if you read the Mars report, which is the regional school committee's consultants for both towns, they make it clear that we're not going to get any more state aid until we reach what's called the target share. And Whitman is closer to target share than Hanson, but we can look at no increases in state aid and annual increases in the minimum local contribution until both towns meet their target shares. So the school budget, it's a beast to work on. It's very complicated, but there are some uncontrollable expenses the schools are looking at this year in the form of $750,000 in increases to the minimum local contribution.
Okay, Rosemary?
I had a quick question to Kathy. So the target share it's also the $7 million in hold harmless we would have to cover too, because I usually look at that as debt. You know, we're not going to see aid because we have the hold harmless.
Right. I think it's more like $4 million in hold harmless, but it's a moving.
I think it went up
You're
this
not
year.
gonna- You're not
Yeah.
going to increase our Chapter 70 monies until we meet target share. And target share is, I hate to use the word, it's a moving target each year. It's not
Yeah.
a fixed cost.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you both. So I think, with respect to the regional school budget, I certainly don't think that, this vote of the school committee is probably going to be the end discussion for those line items. We are a regional school district. We do have another town to consider. And I know, we don't really like to discuss the budgets from a neighboring town. But I mean, the reality is we have to realize that this may be revoted at some point as well. So I think we should keep that in mind as we are moving forward with Article 2, that nothing is etched in stone. Just because we have a vote of the school committee, it's certainly not going to end the discussion with the budget for the district. Okay, anybody else? Anything from the district? So the next item on old business is the annual town meeting and the special town meeting warrants. I believe Lincoln's going to present the draft to the Board of Selectmen at their meeting tomorrow. This is an extremely late time for us to be getting a draft warrant. I'm just looking down further on the agenda where it says how many meetings we have left. We have to vote all of the lines from Article 2 and all of the warrant articles within the annual and the special town meeting before town meeting is on the 3rd of May. So by my calculations, we have 4 meetings to get that accomplished. So I would hope that the committee will be provided a draft warrant before its next meeting, so we can start taking a look at it and start to formulate votes for recommendations to the taxpayers. Lincoln, you see that is available during the week upcoming?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so I guess that exhausts the information on the old business. Communications, the only communication we had was from the district. Reports, updates from town administrator. I guess Dave wanted to wait until you presented anything further before he gave a report of the Building Facilities Capital Expenditure Committee. Lincoln, do you have anything you need to add?
Sure. So obviously the committee is aware of the certification from the school committee of its budget request last week. So, that's obviously the biggest news of the week. And in addition, just to give the committee, I know there's some discussion about the American Rescue Plan, so-called, as passed in Washington and signed by the president recently. So we have an indication that the town will be receiving $1.5 million in direct aid. What is not clear, and what I have curiously been attempting to get clarity on, as have, I think, just about.
Lincoln, I think your audio went out. Does anybody else have? a
Yeah,
hard time
your,
hearing you?
your remote mic is, I don't know where your mic is, but it's acting weird.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Barely.
No? Okay, I don't know what's,
It got softer as you just finished the last sentence.
okay,
You said $1.5 million to the town of Whitman?
that is correct. Is that any better? I don't know what happened.
No.
It's very low.
I'm sorry about that.
There it is. That's better.
I have no idea why that was. At any rate, so.
Once you said 1.5 million, our ears were perked up and then we could hear
All lit up.
We have good indication that the town will be receiving $1.5 million in direct aid from that package. What is not clear, and what I think, just about every municipal, town manager and town administrator is trying to find out, is how we can spend that money. So stay tuned. Must it be used for COVID-19 response? Can it be used for revenue replacement, et cetera? Those are not questions that have clear answers right now. So FYI, I know there's going to certainly be a lot of conversation about that. And as soon as I have clarity on that, the committee will receive that and the Board of Selectmen will receive that. So that's the primary update that I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good to hear.
Anything from, is Ken, is there anything you'd like to add to the discussion tonight?
Nothing that's already been discussed. No.
Okay, so would you forward a updated copy of the Article 2 that we could use as a new working copy sometime during the week, so that everybody could have, the new numbers that are part of the discussion tonight?
Yep.
Thank you very
Get
much.
that out.
Okay, that brings us back to the Building Facility Capital Expenditure Committee. Dave, is there something you wanted to?
Yeah, so at our last meeting, the town administrator has notified the Capitals Committee that there's going to be a change in the way that we look at items that are considered capital. So what that means is that, that might involve something to the effect of reoccurring costs, or even the dollar value of a specific item that we currently now consider as capital. So that change may affect, it's going to affect our committee, so we won't see them as capital warrant articles, and it may change the way what we see in Article 2. So,
Okay. Lincoln, follow up?
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for bringing that up. And just to be clear, so in that draft warrant tomorrow, these changes are by no means final whatsoever, because for starters, they'd have to be adopted by town meeting, because it's in the charge of the Buildings, Facilities, and Capital Expenditures Committee. These are just suggestions from me. They're suggestions, take them or leave them, but just sort of what I think is best practice as far as what is considered a capital item. It was helpful to have feedback from the committee members on Thursday about what that level should be. As far as, now it's $10,000. Should it be 25? Should it be $20,000? So that was really helpful to have that feedback. And but it's definitely subject to approval by town meeting. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Rosemary.
How, are there any specific things that are you varying from the Collins recommendations for the capital? Amounts, anything? Any of your recommendations there from their report?
As far as
Is that question for Lincoln?
Yeah, Lincoln.
As far as the specific projects or in general, how we treat capital?
In general, how you treat capital and the amounts that would qualify for capital. And I think there's a matrix. How would it affect the matrix?
So I'd have to recheck the Collins report about if that had a recommendation for what the capital level is. I would say certainly $10,000. I think industry best practice in having conversations previously with our auditors, with other professionals in the field. In my professional opinion, $10,000 is too low. I'm not sure if the Collins Center agrees with that assessment or not. I'll double check that, but I certainly think higher than 10,000 is pretty well accepted as an industry standard, that it should be higher than that.
Okay, thank you for your question, Rosemary. Answer Lincoln. So I guess it brings to Dave the question, do you expect to have recommendations for the Finance Committee in the foreseeable future? I mean, so the timeline is extremely tight here, I guess. So the Finance Committee will be looking for recommendations from the Building Facilities Capital Expenditure Committee on articles, capital articles.
Right, so prior to Lincoln's hiring, involvement in membership in the Capitals Committee, we did discuss how we were going to present that information to the Finance Committee. And so we wanted to, it was our intent to forward our recommendations to the Finance Committee well prior to the ability for recommendations to be published within the warrant, as well and then also invite the Finance Committee to attend one of our meetings if they wanted any in-depth information beyond which any information I provide to this committee.
Okay, so specifically, our meetings are March 29th, April 5th, April 19th, and April 27th. There are only 4 meetings left before annual and special town meeting. So could you choose one of those dates that you would consider that the Capital Committee would have recommendations for the Finance Committee?
Yeah, so based on the discussions we had during our last meeting, where some items might not be available, might not be considered capital articles, we're waiting for the draft, warrant to be available in order to make our recommendations based on that, and not the capital request that was submitted to the committee directly.
So if I'm not mistaken, the article that's being presented to town meeting wouldn't really affect your recommendations for this fiscal year. Is that correct, Lincoln?
No, that's that's completely incorrect. For example, take the forced sewer main. That had a dollar value in it, and the project has changed. The dollar value has changed. So our recommendations are going to, well, since the article has changed, we're gonna have to revote that. So until we see exactly what is on the draft warrant, we can't comment on whether or not we recommend.
Okay, understood. Yeah, I apologize that you obviously need to get the information before you can even consider having a vote. So, Lincoln, was there something you wanted to add to that?
No, just a brief clarification. When we're talking about the level, and of course, Dave is absolutely correct that if he sees fit, as the chair of that committee, that since the estimate has changed, for example, for the sewer force main, if he sees fit that he wants a new vote of the capital committee about that project, since the estimate, I literally received a new estimate on Friday. So, that number is changing, but I just want to clarify the piece about the level for capital, that under what I would recommend and what's going to be in the draft warrant tomorrow is a change to the charge for the buildings, facilities, and capital committee. And whether that level is 10,000 or 20,000, 25,000, whatever it is, that would be prospective. Because So just, I hope that's a little bit clarifying, but absolutely, if the chairman, if Chairman Cordero sees it as needed, to take a revote on something where the estimates have changed, absolutely, I agree with him. That should occur.
Okay, Kathleen.
Dave, I have a quick question for you, and Lincoln as well. If there are items that previously would have been considered capital items and now they fall below whatever dollar figure is just decided by the deciders, where do those projects get funded? Do they get folded into a department's budget as opposed to an explicit warrant article?
Happy to address that. So yes, going forward in the future, so not at this town meeting, but yes, going forward in fiscal year 2023 and going forward, whatever the higher capital level, if town meeting sees fit to adopt a higher capital level, then yes, amounts below that, just as they are now below the level, would be included if recommended in the operating budget, not as a capital item, but only prospectively going forward, not for this town meeting upcoming.
Okay, that is the answer to your question, Kathleen? Yep. Okay, thank you. Okay, so again, I guess the only thing that we need to take a look at, like I said, is our schedule. And we are posted for next week. We are meeting with the Veterans representative, Veterans Affairs, Sarah Lansing, hopefully with Bob Curran to talk about the facilities manager items in the Article 2 under the purview of that department. And then I would assume we will have a copy of the draft warrant that we could start taking a look at the recommendations, obviously for non-capital warrant articles, financial articles that would need a vote of this committee. So I guess we have a commitment from Ken to send out a new Article 2 and from Lincoln to send a draft warrant once the presentation is made to the Board of Selectmen. So I did forward also from Dennis Smith a copy of the presentation that's going to be made to the Board of Selectmen tomorrow night, so that you'll have some information, as Dave said, on the changes to that particular project and the funding. Anybody have any other questions about anything or anything new business to bring up? Al?
Real quick, Lincoln, glad you're on board, but what happened to your bureau behind you? There's nothing on there anymore. What happened?
I changed my laptop. My laptop ran out of power, so I changed to the desktop, and I need to get something on those bookshelves. Yes.
All good.
Don't worry, you'll accumulate junk quick enough.
Yeah.
Try to keep the junk level down, but I
Commitment.
have my own copies of the mini volume Mass General Laws that you folks may have seen in the other office at some point. So I'm such a government nerd that I'm going to bring in my own version of the Mass General Laws, because I've been told it can't stay at home. So
Clean your house in there.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, I want to thank you all for your participation. All your comments obviously are valued. I'm glad we have a 9-member board and the active members that we have. So until next time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn if there's no further business.
I move
A
to
motion from
adjourn.
I'll
Kathleen,
second.
and we have a second from Ralph. Thank you very much. John Noon,
Yes.
John Galvin,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Al,
Yes,
and I vote yes as
you
well.
got Ralph twice.
I got Ralph twice? Okay.
No, I seconded, only voted once.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Thank you all
Massachusetts
very
vote
much,
twice.
and we'll see you all next week.